Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat, all things money and well-being. And today, my wonderful guest is Fiona Kearns, who runs a consultancy business, but is a business psychologist. And I thought it would be really good to have a chat with Fiona today. So welcome onto Wisdom Chat, Fiona. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Delighted to be here, Phil. It's very exciting. I'm a business psychologist and leadership coach. I work with senior leaders, partners, CEOs, MDs, executive directors, board level execs. I'm personally on a mission to create better leaders, more women leaders specifically, because I think across the world, we need more leaders. And I see that as part of my calling is to bring that about. It comes in part from the history I have in my career in terms of seeing so many capable, fantastic women not always get a fair go at things. And that's where I specialize. Right now, I'm working with a range of clients in the charity sector, GP, solicitors, accountants, partners, production people, operations. It is a range, but it's those who are struggling to be the CEO they want or feel ready to be CEO sometimes. And I really care about that because I love having a good conversation with somebody, picking out their strengths and helping them stretch themselves to go forward. And it is the most fun part of my day, my week, able to help people with that.
That's wonderful, Fiona. And I was just thinking, for our listeners' benefit, one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of chat with you is because of some of the work that you do with these leaders. Bearing in mind, just recently there was a report released with regards to the current mental health state of our nation and how that has, I suppose, worsened in some respects, and not surprisingly so, because we've been through the pandemic and it's not really gone yet. You can see people's different sort of ideas and approaches to more freedom in life. All the lockdowns gone and restrictions, yet some people don't feel as free as others. So that's one thing. But the other thing as well is that what businesses and business leaders have been through this period of time, and we look at the practicalities, the externals of that, and think, yes, we're all getting back to normal, whatever normal is. But at the same time, what about the business leader? What about the individual? What about those that you're working with who themselves are working with others who need their services, like the psychologists and the counsellors and the GPs and people like that, whose workload has risen phenomenally, and the demands and the pressures on them, the level of anxiety must be quite high for them. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Fiona?
I mean, you've really hit, Phil, on what's going on for those people. Anybody that's at the coal face of dealing with people, you want to help people. I mean, we hear about our NHS workers who are fantastic, and that's amazing. But there's a layer in private organizations, in nonprofits and so on, who have been fulfilling somewhat the same role in terms of they want to protect their employees, they're protecting their organization, donations are down, profits, may be down. So they're dealing with often organizational and business challenges and the difficulties of their staff as well. It's really difficult. There can be the big narrative that, companies don't care about people, but that's not so true, I feel. It's certainly not my experience. Most organizations do care about their staff, even if it's somewhat self-serving. They want them to be well enough to go in and do their job. But when you're looking after your team, your organization, the people within, you're often bearing the brunt of it. The HR partners that are there, as you say, the GPs, the psychologists and so on, they're doing a power of work.
Yeah.
They're aware of the need, the huge need that's out there, and they're overwhelmed by it, and they are working as hard. They cannot work any harder. They're past it. And then they know there aren't resources. They don't want to take resources for themselves either, because they feel like that would be the wrong thing to do. But who helps them? Who helps them cope? Where's their safety valve? Where is their support? Can they share that with others? Is that just adding another burden? And they don't want to be a burden. They want to be an asset. They want to help people. This is just something that has been building and building and building. And there is this expectation now, as the pandemic is somewhat winding down and we're all getting back to normal, as you say. What is that? It's all getting back to the way things was, but nobody is accounting for this huge pressure people have been under, and there's no processing of that. So how do they process it? And they've been through a traumatic experience. There have been so many changes. They're struggling themselves. They know they're ready to crumble. They're aware. They know, if somebody came to me with this, I'd be telling them to take, a month off work or something like that. And yet they know they cannot do that. They don't feel that's an option for them. So they have to keep coping. But how long can you keep coping? You need support, and you need to tap into your own community and the people around you and so on. And I'd like to add this piece, because I don't hear it discussed too much, but when we talk about, the mental health challenges that are in our society, the truth is that central to that is connection. Our mental health, our connection with other people is a key part of being healthy mentally and otherwise. And the pandemic, while we've zoomed all the online stuff, it has taken that element away. And I don't think we're giving enough recognition of the importance of getting off your phone, going out and meeting somebody. And yes, it's more of an effort for that one-to-one, face-to-face, in-person connection. And I'd love to see people recognizing that and being a bit proactive about it themselves in teams and organizations and beyond. Notwithstanding Zoom and Teams and all the others are a great tool, but I think we're missing that piece, and that's central to the mental health piece.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's been interesting in some of the networking meetings where I've eventually attended in person, and just hearing and seeing the people, just the fact that you're in the room, you're with people again. There is something really nice about that. And you're right about the connection side, and I think people have missed that connection. This whole area of isolation is actually being, what we don't realize and appreciate is isolation for a human being is actually very unhealthy. And connection is one of those things that actually enables us to have longevity of life. So when we break those connections, reduce those connections, and assign ourselves to isolation, which some people are still doing because of obviously getting COVID and taking time out to isolate, I think we can all safely say it's an absolute pain in the neck, because it's the very opposite to what we need as human beings. And I remember, when we talk about things like mental health and well-being, I was looking at one of the areas within just the realm of finances that people often search around, and the search criteria, and they search, one of the biggest searches has been about money anxiety. How do I deal with money anxiety? And it's been on an upward trajectory since 2004. So this is way before the pandemic, yet the pandemic will have exacerbated it, because there's been huge pressures financially brought to bear on businesses and also individuals. And we've got the rising cost of living phenomenally at the moment. And with the conflict in Ukraine, the effects of that is being felt globally. And so that you can imagine there's a lot of a lot of things going through people's minds. Anxiety will be something that they'll be acutely feeling at this moment in time, and yeah, the whole area of connection, I think, is a vital part of addressing some of that issue. It's not the total answer, but it has a big part to play, because who do you talk to? I once said to somebody, "Who cares for the carer?" And it's really important that when we're actually doing the work that we do, that you're mindful of the fact that you need to care for yourself. And if you're not caring for yourself, how can you care for or lead others? And this is where people then get into realms that, they're short tempers, they're not as compassionate or empathetic. And these are qualities that leaders need to exercise, don't they? So,
Absolutely. They absolutely do. And the other thing about that is that when you behave in a way that you're not proud of, you not only have those difficult things that you've done, but you beat yourself up after it. Then you add guilt for not being the person that you want to be. And, we all do things that we're not proud of from time to time. I'd love to tell you I was a perfect being, but, I'm not. Occasionally I'm rude when I shouldn't be. And I know that's wrong. And afterwards I think, why did you make that remark?
I
It was
can't
needless.
imagine that of you, Fiona, at all.
Well, you're very kind, Phil, but I just shared a video on LinkedIn recently about that, because, I was frustrated and stressed in a particular situation and thought I'd make this really clever remark. It's really embarrassing, and I'm ashamed of it, because I don't want to be a rude person, right? But then you have the time afterwards going, oh, God. Get the opportunity, there's all of this. So this is the layers that are within it. We want to do a good job and we beat ourselves up, and that adds to the anxiety too. So it's this piece that's building, and that's why we do have to mind ourselves. In a way, me sharing my embarrassing, shameful thing was somewhat cathartic, because I thought, yeah, like we all do this. I can't be the only person that's rude from time to time. I'm absolutely not saying I'm proud of it. I'm not. But that's what happens, and we have to give ourselves a bit of grace and be kind to ourselves to a degree, or otherwise we're just notching it up. And the thing is that we think there's this fallacy out there too, and I've seen people play this out in their career. They think if they have a lesser job, a job with less status, I don't want to be the manager, I just want to be one of the team. They think that will, improve things, and it doesn't. And no. And also when you go up the ladder, so to speak, that you'll have less things to do, right? Maybe you'll have less people interaction, but you often don't either. There can be more pressure. Now, a lot of it is something that you've applied to yourself. But it's there, and it's life limiting. That sounds like a big statement to make, but it really is, because it's about the quality of your life. It's that stress that you're really adding to yourself and making things worse when you're doing your best. And I think the question there is, are you doing your best, and are you learning from the mistakes that you're making as well? And you have to cut yourself some slack, because we're just human. We make mistakes. We have to be a little bit kinder to others, but ourselves as well. And I think that gets forgotten. I think having your own little boardroom or team that you can contact when you're having a rough day, when you're doing all those things. And I feel lucky that I have that. I have some people I can send a text. I can phone up if I'm stuck. But I think not everybody does, and it's not always a safe space in the business environment to do that.
And that's right. And the other thing as well, which is not often really thought of, and that is the effects that stress and anxiety can have on our ability to function. They often say, they deprive us of the ability to think rationally and logically, And so we tend to react out of an emotional state when we're in those stressful and anxious moments. And so therefore, when we're having to make key decisions or communicate something to people or with somebody, out of an emotional state can very often go so badly wrong. And like you say, you know, we are human beings. I mean, I think of myself and the times where I've misread a situation because of where I was at. And so I was playing a certain narrative in my own mind about that situation and wasn't able to stand back and just look at the facts. And I would say to anybody who finds themselves in that situation, stop for a moment. Don't react straight away. Stop for a moment and start to look at the facts. Even write them down. The facts, just the facts, not opinions, not my thoughts and ideas, but what are the facts? Because oftentimes when we start to rationally think around the facts, we then see a more truer picture. And it enables us then to respond in the manner we need to respond. But I don't know if you've come across situations like that, and I know you've talked about connection being important, and I've mentioned about the need to perhaps just take a step back and look at the situation more in a factual context. But marrying the two, I think, are vital. And you mentioned having people to talk to. I mean, what would your advice be to people who are feeling that stress and anxiety at the moment?
Yeah. I think my advice would be to anyone who is burnt out. I think it's, I mean, what you're suggesting, Phil, is a really good idea, by the way. And the thing about being burnt out is that you have reduced cognitive capacity. You know, your brain is you know, you're burnt out. You've burned the candle at both ends. You have this emotional load on yourself. You're not operating at your best. I'll do a call back to one thing I said earlier, and this would be, you know, are you doing your best right now? I think that's a good check-in to have. I do see the piece of you can get very involved in a situation. So getting clear on what's happening is a good one. And I will often do that. Now, I work with people who are in toxic workplaces as well. And I will encourage people to write things down. Not because people are going to sue, but just to check their own reality. Because sometimes in those difficult work situations, things can happen and you doubt yourself. Like, didn't he say last week to do that? And now today he's saying he didn't say that last week. You know, even just writing that down helps you think, okay, I'm not going crazy. I'm keeping a grip on that. And then it's some basic things like setting some boundaries for yourself. It's saying no to things. It's deciding what you're going to do. And it's booking some thinking time off. I think this is a funny one, but it's in your business, you know, booking some time off and getting into the habit of doing it, which I appreciate is really hard, especially if you're in a small business and you're doing everything yourself. But, you know, if you can book an hour off on a Friday, you know, if you made that commitment, or, you know, on Tuesday, I won't start till 10, or, you know, something like that, carving out some time, and ideally longer than that, by the way. An hour is not sufficient. If you can carve out a half day, a day in your week, not just for thinking purely, but, you know, to work on the business, to think strategically, to think of, you know, the big things that could develop, it gives yourself space. And I think that works for a couple of reasons. Because one, if you've carved that time out and you've blocked it out, if you've got staff and you've let them know, listen, I'm not available for half day Friday or whatever it would be, then they know not to disturb you. You'll probably use some of that time to clean up other stuff, which is actually okay. But you're also giving yourself permission to do that, and do that with other things. So set boundaries, say no to things as well are really key. But the other thing that I see that is really useful for my clients, and this is where having good people around you, is having somebody to speak to say, you're not going crazy if that's what's needed. You're doing the right thing, because particularly when you're in senior positions, like who tells the CEO or, you know, the COO or the vice president or whoever you're doing a good job? Well, probably nobody. So they're wondering, am I doing a good job? So supporting people and helping them with that and being there is a key part of it. But I think you have to set the boundaries. I think you need to fact check what you do, and you have to make space for yourself, give yourself permission to have that space. And I think communicate that to your team as well.
That's wonderful, Fiona. And I think great advice there. I'm just conscious that time has passed us by. I mean, we could talk for hours on this subject. I'm certain of it. But some really helpful pointers there, Fiona. Thank you so much for giving of your time for Wisdom Chat. I hope our listeners feel a little bit more encouraged that they're not on their own if they are going through some challenging times for themselves personally. And some of the tips that you've just given there, I think are really key to help maintaining that well-being on an individual basis. So thank you so much, Fiona. For our listeners, if you want to know any more, please go to the orumgoldltd.co.uk website. I will put you in touch with whomever you need to talk with. But if we can be of any further assistance, then please do contact us through the website. And Fiona, thank you very much for your time. Lovely to chat with you, and have a great rest of the day.
Oh, thanks so much, Phil. It's been a lot of fun to speak with you today.